Thanks, Matt. All right, so I was writing down a word for y'all. Hopefully you can receive it well. There's a lot of big gifts and talents in this room, but they're not your talents. The talents that God has given you are supposed to be used for others, not yourself. So I don't know how that lands on you, but I'm going to share my story in the next 2 minutes, and then I'm going to kind of elaborate what we're doing in the community that's only 3 miles away from right where we're standing. So I grew up without a mom or a dad. My dad was a heroin addict. He still is today. My mom was an alcoholic. She was found on life support in West Palm Beach, Florida when I was 12 years old. So I've never really seen my father or my dad together to this day, and I'm 35. So I've traveled this lifestyle of not knowing really my purpose. So I grew up around drugs, alcohol, violence, picked up my first crack can at 14, and entered the drug world for the next 15 years of my life. So when you're in that situation, the question I always wrestled with was, what is my purpose? I didn't go to school. I barely graduated. I didn't have enough college credits to even get into any kind of community college. So as a young man, I struggled with this. What is my purpose? So in 2011, my last job I was on, I had a great occupation of building scaffolding. And if you go out of this building, there's some actually right here. And I built those on top of Navy ships out at Mayport Naval Station. Don't know how I got there, but God put me there, and it was an amazing opportunity. But in 2011, I came to Jacksonville because I was fired from my last job. Stole some company property, showed up at my house one day. The CEO, the sheriff's office was there and basically said, you have two options here. You can either be locked up or you can give us the keys to the facility and we're just going to part ways. 2011 came. I came here to Jacksonville, still asking the question, what is my purpose? 25 years old. My mom's still out of my life. My dad's still chasing drugs. I really didn't have anybody here in Jacksonville. Well, one day my crane operator came to me and he says, man, you know what? I see something in you. You work hard, but do you know your purpose? And I was like, know your purpose? I really don't know that question. So a couple weeks go by and this young man, crane operator, who was lifting my material up on one of the United States destroyers out at Mayport, he says, hey man, I want to invite you to church. Church changed my life. So in 2012, I stepped foot into the church for the first time in my entire life, found a personal relationship with the Lord. So from that point on, things started to fall in place, and I started to discover my purpose. So I got back into the corporate area because I was diagnosed with cancer in 2013. So a lot of times in life, you go through these really highs, things happen, and then you go through these really lows. So then I was still trying to figure out, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And so in 2014, I took an international mission trip to Cado, Brazil. So the purpose of this trip was there was an organization, to this day, is one of the largest nonprofits in the world, Compassion International. Anybody ever heard of it? Anybody sponsor kids? Okay, we got some in the room. So this organization, for $38 a month, gives you an opportunity to go and meet your child face-to-face. Here in the United States, 92% of people who sponsor a kid will never see them. They'll write a check, they'll put it in the mail, they'll get a letter back from this kid. Great organization. They're releasing hundreds and millions of kids from poverty internationally. So we get home, we see our child. It's a great trip. We spend $10,000 to go see one kid. So not a lot of people have $10,000 to go see their kid. So over the course of the next 5 years of my life, I'm still trying to figure out, what is my purpose? So I go to work for a couple corporate jobs here in Jacksonville, one being a large janitorial company. We cleaned hundreds of banks and big facilities, and I was an executive, and it was great. I was making tons of money, but it wasn't my purpose. And over the course of the next 2 years, I started to discover something was tapping into me that I'd never had before, a desire to help other people. And so in 2018, I was sitting on the couch with my wife watching Shark Tank, and I look over and I see my kid on the refrigerator, and I was like, man, this organization, it was about a $2.3 billion nonprofit sponsoring almost 1.4 million kids. And I said, well, what about kids in our city that are in poverty? What are we doing for them? So 2018, that was the launch of our nonprofit here in Jacksonville called Sponsored by Grace. This community right here is 3 miles from where you're sitting right now, directly over here, Northwest Jacksonville. This community, almost 7 years ago, was the murder capital apartment complex in the city. Did you know 32209 is the murder capital zip code of this city for the last decade? Northwest Jacksonville. Some of the stats today: we average 1 to 4 overdoses a day. We average 1 to 3 murders a day. We average 1 to 3 suicides a day. It's 180 people losing their lives every single month. Just in the last year, I spent my time working very closely with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. How do we change this? How do we bring impact? It starts with consistency. One of my lines was, bridges take time to build. One of those components is you got to show up. 2018, I walked in this apartment complex. I don't have my clicker. Anybody got a clicker? No clicker. Okay. Well, we walked into this apartment complex 2018, and I walked into, thank you. See if I can find it real quick. This room. 3 miles away from where you're sitting right now, this is how people live. Black mold on the ceilings, no food in refrigerators, not knowing if they're going to wake up alive because of how many bullet holes go through their wall. This is one of our young mans in our community. I want you to look at this photo because a lot of times in business, we don't know how blessed we are. This young man right here was one of the biggest drug dealers in our community. 2019, we hold a church service in this community. This young man comes and says, "I'm tired of killing people." I had the joy and honor of baptizing him. His life has been radically changed because somebody showed up. Not only showed up, but we stayed consistent. A lot of times in our communities, we have about 12 apartment complexes in this city who are labeled the worst. And people are trying to figure out, what do we do to change the city? It's great we have great companies in this city. It's great that we're thriving with economic development. But let us not forget about the lives that are being lost right here in our city. And ultimately, it's the next generation. So this photo represents a lot to me because every single week, for 3 days a week, we're in this community. We have not had a murder in 2 years. Our crime rate has went down. It has made history in the community of 32209. With that comes employment. So just last year, we decided that we need to change the employment of this community. 32209, our young men and women are labeled by where they live, so they have no hope of getting jobs. So what do? We get creative. So in the last 2 years, we've created a coffee industry around this community. One, because the African American community has never understood what coffee could do, what it means. And so we took a leap of faith. We went out and bought a 30-foot old military school bus. And we turned this thing into a mobile coffee shop for around the city. And these kids come and work it every single summer. Going great, making lots of money. People are employed. But then just last year, the Jaguars get involved. We have a player, Tyler Shatley, steps up. He says, "Man, I love what you're doing in this community. Let's build a store." So right now, we're building a store. Just last week, we had a double homicide in the Arlington area, and people right across from JU, and people are looking at me like I'm crazy. Why would you build a coffee shop on University Boulevard in a hopeless area of town? Why not? Why wouldn't we? I think a lot of times in business, we search out areas that are going to be the most successful. But why not take a risk in going into areas that have been overlooked, that have been voiceless, that there's been no opportunity? But what if lives are changed? What if kids are impacted? What if families are reunited? Just like Matthew Chang. And he's going to hate that I'm sharing this. I made tons of money in corporate America as a young man. I could have kept going. I could have bought into the company. But that man right there, he sat at a table and said, You know what, man? I believe in you. And a lot of us in the room, we just got to tell that to somebody else. I believe in you. I know you have what it takes. And the second part of that this man right here did, he took action behind it. He said, you know what? I want you to leave your job. Making 6 figures. I've got 3 kids. Bills are crazy. And he wrote me a check to chase my dream. That dream has turned into a $500,000 organization, 8 staff members, 4 people from our community, our own business. Because of that, man took action. And what I want to share with you guys is, like I said, there's a lot of talent in this room. It's not your talent. It's supposed to be used for someone else. So I don't know who you need to tell or what you need to invest in or any kind of organization that's dear to your heart. You need to keep going. Because there are people like myself and my team that are fighting for these communities. And I believe the bigger the businesses stand up, the more opportunities here in our city, it's going to create more opportunity for hopeless communities. And rather for us being one of the murder capital cities of the United States, I believe we can change that. But it takes people like you guys. So I'm honored to be here today. I know I don't have a lot of time, but I want you guys to remember, not only myself, but the other people you will hear after me, we're fighting every single day. Last month, I'll end with this. I got 4 calls. 9 of our community members lost their lives. 1 of them jumped off the Dames Point Bridge. 4 of them were shot and killed just going to the grocery store. And the rest were suicides. You know how sad it is when you walk in and you see somebody who's taken their life or an unplanned event happens and it cancels out the family legacy. It's devastating. I'm here to tell you, the talents that God has given all of you in this room are not for you. They're for other people. Thank y'all.